All right, welcome to today's episode of Early Birds. Today with us a really special guest, Micha Bitterli from Deloitte.
Hi.
Hi Micha, welcome to the show. My name is David. Today a little exception, not Flavio, in this episode. And today we want to talk about Polimec and Deloitte's collaboration. And obviously all around today's topic is all around on-chain credentials. With that being said, a little maybe fun introduction, Micha. 1.5, 2 years ago, when there was this little cold call from me, starting to talk about KYC credentials, and this would be really cool, and Deloitte, and then we talked about blockchain and the potential, and Killed as an infrastructure provider. Be honest, what was your first thought? What did you initially think, or what was your first impression in that discussion? Because I want to ask this question later again.
I mean, we are coming of a more classical business, right? So it sounded interesting, but you start pretty fast to ask yourself, how should that be successful in any meaning? I mean, we have seen a certain potential. It was somehow cool because it goes to end clients, right? Mm-hmm. We always do business to business, right? And this really went into end clients. So we said it's a cool opportunity to open a channel to end clients. And the next thought was, oh shit, it's about end clients. And if you know Deloitte a little bit, and you work for a Big Four as well, this comes with some complexity, which start you to concern, right? So first thought, sounds interesting, but a big but.
I mean, agree about it. We had a discussion I can remember was a really long first discussion for many, many hours. And then within a few weeks, few months, you basically ventured into this business and you created this on-chain DID service that you're basically having running now. I mean, there will be a lot of viewers, watchers, listeners who already know this solution. But for those who don't know what it is, can you quickly explain what is that KYC credential we're talking about?
I mean, in essence, a KYC credential is nothing else than the digital form of your passport. And I think that also makes it different to other providers, right? It's not a one-off identification. It gives you a kind of a document, which is a credential, which you have in your wallet, which you can use multiple times. It's reusable. And I think that's a main difference to what was done before, right? So you can use it in an entire ecosystem. Currently, a small ecosystem, which will grow in pretty soon in the future.
Okay, you've already mentioned the challenges doing this as a Big Four accounting firm, and as you've mentioned, I was in a Big Four accounting firm. Can you quickly go through high level what are things people are not aware of, and what is the little differentiator why it's sitting perfectly well with a Big Four accounting firm like Deloitte offering this service?
It fits perfectly a Big Four because a lot of people have this idea, right? And you see that a lot in the market. And we had a lot of discussions with people, and a lot of people draw how that can work. But they always have a question mark in who is validating the data, right? A credential is nice, but almost worthless if I, as a private person, provide it to you, right? Who would trust in this credential? Because I can write in there everything, right? It's like they did in golf clubs, and I give you the handicap, so it's stuff like that, which has nothing to do with reality, right? But a Big Four is perfectly suited and has the trust, especially from legal bodies, regulatory bodies, that we can actually issue such credentials because we issue audit reports people rely on. So a reliable credential needs to come from a trusted party, and the Big Four is such a trusted party, which I think besides Big Four can only be a governmental entity or something like that, right? Governmental entities have a little bit the issue that it's only local. We see that with the eKYCs, right? Or the EIDs, they're only valid typically in the country they are issued. Here we have a global solution. So it needs to be an international trusted party. And I think that's the perfect role Deloitte can take.
Understand. And now, we have the solution with Kilt as the underlying infrastructure. Because I think it's pretty clear now. It's good to understand why the secret sauce of what is the difference from Deloitte issuing such a credential compared to a KYC provider in Spain, a random one, from a trust perspective. But then thinking about other similar products, like there's MetaMask ID, Polygon ID, Coinbase ID. It's all around identities. What is the difference of your solution compared to those guys' solution?
I wouldn't say it's a difference. It's something. It's a different product. It's if you go and open a bank account at Coinbase, for example, right? You get identified the first time, and then that's it, right? More or less, and you can use it at Coinbase, all right? What we provide is the passport, which allows you to open the account. That's a complete different story, right? So with our credential, you can go to Polimec and open an account. And in the future, you can go to other parties and open an account there as well, without every time going through this identification, which you currently need to do, right? And I don't even think it is different. It's a different product, right? Because it is valid for a year. It's not just for one specified dedicated service, and it's not a one-off, so you can reuse it, and that's the main difference.
Yeah, and also based on my understanding is that if you open such an account with, let's say, Coinbase, and you have a Coinbase ID, you basically have a yes, I have been KYC'd by. But the beauty of your solution, which we are also using, is that using Polimec or using your KYC credential to use Polimec, we don't need all of the information. And I think that's what you cannot do with the other ones, where you can basically request specific data fields. For us, it's like, let's say 2 data points. Is the individual older than 18 and from a specific country? Yes, please feel free to access basically Polimec as a service or the Polimec platform. Where with the other guys, it's basically just a confirmation that you have been, but you don't have any access to the data points that you could utilize those for, more specific, on Polimec, especially project issuers, where they can tailor their fundraise, where they can also say, hey, I, for regulatory reasons, cannot allow somebody from country X to participate, and that wouldn't be possible with another solution, right?
No, but I mean, you also need to see the purpose why it was done, right? We are a pure DID provider, so in our mind, we want to generate an identity which allows the person itself to own its data, right? So we added a lot of fields, like the information that you are above 18, as you mentioned, instead of a date of birth. So you don't need to share this private data. Yeah, so it allows you anonymization to a certain degree. While that we proved all the data, right? The user verifier is Polimec. We check the first name, the last name. We do sanction checks in the background. We do that continuous in monitoring, right, to ensure that this is a good counterparty. And you don't even need to see or to know them, because it is done in the background, and I only take the data I want to have. But the important thing is, it's not us providing you the data. It is the user itself providing you the data. So the data is not with Deloitte. The data is with our clients, which share their credential.
Yep. And as you've just mentioned that, you're also doing this monitoring. That's a nice buzzword. So how often does that happen, and what does that mean? Because I think compared to, let's say, a traditional KYC, if you open a bank account, they probably also do a one-of-one. What is the difference there? Because I think you have quite some benefits the way you're offering this solution.
I can give you two type of answers. One is more a regulatory angle, and the other is more and the business angle. Right? The regulatory angle would say there is two parts. If you look into KYC, it is one is the identification of a person. That is, you are you. So you show me your ID. We do a video identification. We compare that the person on the picture is the same as you in front of us, right? We do address verification, stuff like that. We prove the basic data. Yeah. And then you are more or less identified. And then there are additional things which we need to understand, which sometimes happen directly in the bank without you knowing, and also happen at a crypto exchange to a certain degree, right? And one is sanction screening, right? And if you're sanctioned, you don't get a bank account, right?
Yep.
So what we do is we also centralize this point into our credentials. So every credential holder from us is not sanctioned, and sanctioned means in a financial crime sense, not that you were driving with too much beer or whatever, and you lost your ticket or whatever for a month.
Yep.
That's not relevant if you want to invest somewhere. But if you have data financial crime, then it becomes relevant, right? And this saves a lot of money in the first instance for our verifier. But the reason why we do that is much easier. It is because we are Deloitte. We, and honestly, all parties in this world, or most of them, depends a little bit on the country, are not allowed to work together with sanctioned people. It depends a little bit on the service, but as a general rule, right? So we are not allowed to issue a certificate to a sanctioned person. And this has a big advantage for the verifiers because they know only people come to them which are not sanctioned. Now, what can happen is that a person becomes sanctioned while holding a certificate. And as said, the certificate is valid for a year. And that means in this year, if you marry, you can go to our front end, you change your name, you potentially need to repeat certain steps of the process, but it's all free of charge, right?
Yep.
Because it's valid for a year, right? So it can be that during this year, you get sanctioned. And we do a daily monitoring of the sanction lists if somebody gets sanctioned, because you can also be accused to support somebody when he uses the certificate and stuff like that. In case that would happen, and that is very rare, and you need to do something to get on that. And there is a process to ensure that we don't do that for no reason, right? So you still have the chance to say, no, I'm not a sanctioned person. And then we revoke the certificate. Revoking the certificate means next time you access, for example, Polimec, it's not valid anymore, and you guys know something happened, right? Can have two reasons. One is sanction, other is it's the end of the certificate, right? That's why we need to renew. And the reason we need to renew is, as said, the main difference between our certificate and a one-off identification is it's valid for a year. And to ensure that a certificate is valid more than 2 months or whatever they say the last time you need to have done this one-off identification, is we need to ensure that the data is still accurate. So we need to recycle the credentials or the data and the credentials. So after a certain time, which is typically a year, we need to go back and ask at least, is the information still valid, right? Because it can also be that you don't think about updating your credential. It depends a little bit how many times you use it. So we have this process that on yearly level, terms, you need to update your credentials. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you for the explanation. Now let's get to some other interesting and juicy questions, because I mean, since the KYC credential service went live, I can imagine that, this is basically, I mean, built on killed infrastructure, yes, can be used for any kind of Web 2, Web 3, whatever services. But I can imagine that there is a lot of, requests of companies who want to use that. Can you maybe give us a little indication of, are there Polkadot projects, for example? Are there projects from, is it more blockchain, Web2, healthcare, education? Where is the interest of those, for your service? Where is are there any clusters where I can see there is a tendency?
We tried already at the Zurich with not a lot of success. I'm not sure if you're more successful today. We are really not allowed to talk about our pipeline. I
will always try.
I try to answer it on a very high level, so nobody goes after me afterwards. Right? Web3 projects, yes. Sure, there are a lot of examples where you can use digital identities. If you start to think about it, almost everything needs DIDs at the end. You just need to think about strong enough. As soon as you have individuals involved, DID is an option. As soon as you have individuals and money involved, then most of the time it's more than just an option. So there are these obvious use cases, right? Like the Coinbases of this world, which already have that today, but there are, this is a sector we have discussions. Then Web 2, yes, we have discussions also in the Web 2 universe, because it can be easily integrated into any website at the end. I think it is a little bit the chicken and egg, right? And that's also a little bit coming back to the first question, right? That was also the first thought I had, or we as Deloitte had, to enter into this is the question, it's a chicken and egg, right? If you have sufficient credentials out there, you're very attractive, especially for the Web 2. Also for Web 3, but you get this leverage effect, right? And you can say, I have this base, please accept my credentials, and you provide added value. On the other side, you need the verifiers that it's interesting for the verifier holder to get the certificate. And I think we found quite a nice way to build that up, also together with you, right? And I think once we achieved a certain mass of credentials, then Web 2 will be much more interesting, and then it will open up quite tremendously. Saying that, we are very global with you guys currently, right? Almost every country.
Yes.
So classic Web 2 stores, you need to have a certain amount of credential in a certain country, right? But I think we can achieve that. So we have discussions also more on governmental levels. We have very interesting discussions where it goes a little bit in between Web 2, Web 3, where you have bridges like that. We can also think about things like prove the ownership of a picture or a document or whatever. I mean, if you think about DID, it's like an electronic signature in the future, without the complexity of an electronic signature, right? I have an electronic signature on my own. The user experience is a little bit difficult, let's say it like that. But at the end, I mean, a credential and a DID, if you can sign that and it's proven that it's really you doing that with technology, it's like a digital signature, right?
But this also, thinking about it, gives a lot of opportunities if you have such a credential. Thinking about there are currently new emerging problems. Thinking about fake news, bots, deepfakes, whatsoever. Your credential could play a part of this. How you could basically fight those problems, isn't it like that in a Web 2, Web 3 world?
Yes, and we also do on the KYX, we have also collaborations, like for example with Pairpoint, which does DIDs for assets, right? So the question is where you start, right? Is I think there's one part which we cover with our credentials for legal entities and natural person. That's you can prove that you actually published an article or whatever, right? But I think it's also important, and at least as important, that a bot needs a DID. Right? That this was not a human being.
Yes.
Right? This was an AI. Yeah. So that the servers also get the IDs, and when they start to communicate, and who did what, right? So that at the end, if there is no DID, this is you don't need to trust. But at the end, it would be nice if you can do that as well on the machine side, right? And PowerPoint, for example, does stuff like this, right? And we do it on the natural person legal entity because we didn't find out how you do a face recognition of a bot. It's a little bit difficult.
Yep.
Yes, but sure, fake news is a huge topic, right? And that's also something we look at and we have discussions. Honestly, without telling with whom we talk, but is that you can prove that it was issued by you.
Yep.
There was recently an article, I think, by the White House, which said they're not allowed anymore to issue any statements if they are not able to prove that it's from the White House, because you have so many deepfakes on these informations, right? That it becomes hard to know what is the truth. And I think that's exactly where a Big Four can jump in, because this single source of truth, right? We say, this is really David, and this was really David who said this, and it's not somebody who wants to make look David bad and just was writing something in your name. Yeah. We did that in the past with a lot of tricks. I was an auditor. I think we changed every year. We changed a little bit the wording. So if somebody came and said, this is an audit report, we could say, what year? And then we could say, no, this is a fake.
Yep.
Right? And now we have complete different technology to do that. Yeah. But sure, that's a big area where this will play, and you need to think about the DID also more in two things, and I think then the use cases get clear, right? A DID is really your identity in the digital world, meaning it can be your passport or password, your user account, right, which has access to everything, right? It's like your Google account, but it's not owned by Google, it's owned by you. But it provides you access wherever you want, right?
Yep.
And it identifies yourself. But you can say when you want to identify. So if you want to prove that you really issued something or you really own a picture you did, then it's for you interesting to share this information, right? Even if it's just the ID. But if you go to a certain website, and I'm a person, I'm honestly deeply annoyed by websites which ask for my data. I say, this is interesting. So please put your first name, last name, date of birth, and whatever information, and then I'm gone, right? So why do you need to do that if you just want to read something or just look at something that doesn't make any sense? And there you can choose as a certificate holder not to share anything, right?
Yep, I agree. And I love the concept. I mean, I think there's one fundamental question we need to talk about, because this comes up pretty often. I mean, we had those discussions. We were talking quite some time. There is we're having now Deloitte in the Polkadot ecosystem. We're really happy to have you in the ecosystem as a partner. But, there's quite often this question, because this solution is kind of incorporated also in the Polkadot, ecos, like technology-wise, Polkadot technology, with Kilt as the underlying infrastructure. But what people then sometimes do not understand is that, as you've mentioned, you can use it for Web 2. What is it? Let's take, for example, Ethereum or any other chain. Let's take Solana. Could they use this solution if they need any, let's call it Swiss banking level KYC?
Sure. I mean, you need to understand what we do on the Polkadot system or with Kilt, right? I mean, in fact, what we do is we get a DID from Kilt, which is Web3 standard. Also, European Union and other countries go on the same standard. So that's universal identifier, right? That's first what is important, right? Which can be shared. The second is we store in the blockchain the hash of the certificate, which is also nothing special. I mean, that's something we do since years, also outside of Web3, to prove that the document hasn't changed. We prove that the certificate hasn't changed. And then we add some metadata to it, like issued by Deloitte, valid till, stuff like that, right? And all you do on the Kilt platform is if I present you the wallet, you check if the information you just got is still valid, yes or no, right? It's not that we would have complex blockchain, whatever operations somewhere, which you need to integrate and whatever. At the end, you prove that with a verifier code, which is, 50 lines of code. It's very simple, right?
Very cool. I mean, really good to know. So let me come back to the question I asked in the beginning. So when we met the first time, 1.5, 2 years ago in Zurich Hartbrücke area, and you met us the first time, compared to the journey you had, and I mean, you were now at various events, I think you're really, in the meantime, like, how do you say, you're really into Web3 in the meantime, because I mean, there's probably not many people who understand KYC credentials as good as you do, in combination with blockchain and so on. As kind of a closing statement, what do you think? Where do we stand 5 years from now? What could potentially happen? Thinking about such a solution with a KYC credential.
I think in 5 years we'll have 2-3 big KYC providers or DID providers, which provide it directly to the end clients, which are trusted. One a little bit more, one a bit less, but honestly, you have use cases where you need a little bit more trust, right? If you're more in the financial space, then I think a Deloitte is better than another company which is not a big four, right? But I think there are sufficient use cases where you don't need the strength of Deloitte or the quality of Deloitte. So I think you will have 2-3 of them. It will most likely provide you access to as a login feature to a lot of services. I think it will go a lot back into the physical world with a lot of use cases, like your handy or mobile, in real English, not Swiss, your mobile knows that you are you. Right. This is also something we can look at to combine this, right? Yep. Your DID with a mobile ID. So the car knows you drive it, right? Which is then also relevant. It all goes then with regulations, right? If you drive the car, then the data of the car is yours because you're driving it, right? But did you know that the car manufacturer in the background collects all your data? It's a multi-billion-dollar business, right? And it's not your data. So, but by enabling this, we can enable you to get the data and that you benefit from the data. You get gasoline for your car or electricity that's paid automatically because your handy is in the car. You have a payment function, which is linked to your DID. You walk through a smart city, but that's not 5 years. That goes a little bit more down the road, right? Yep. And you decide your preferences, right? So if you walk into a shop, you decide if they come to you, if they already show what you looked at in the internet or whatever. But I think it will be much. It goes into a direction where you have much more your destiny in your own hands, right? Where it gets much more customized, but not customized in a sense of algorithms or whatever in the background, but it's based on your preferences. And I think that's the big difference, and that will solve a lot of issues. And that's why I think that the use cases which solve regulatory issues, like the one with the car, or if you think about cruise ships, right? from a data perspective, complete nightmare, right? You collect data of people and then you pass from one country to the other where you have multiple regulations you should comply with. It's much easier if you just have a DID on the boat.
Yep.
Right? And somewhere you have centralized data to onboard at the beginning, right? So I think there are some use cases which are easier, which come faster because they solve a problem which triggers costs. And then the next level will be then more on the marketing. We also know that works pretty well because you can make money, and then the other is coming. I think it's the DID will become the passport of the digital world, and we will use it as we use an identity card in these days when we are in the physical world, and it will even replace to a certain degree the physical ID card.
Very nice. I mean, to wrap that up, really exciting to see. We were lucky that we were involved with you developing that solution, but seeing, for us, it was like we were thinking about we need a Swiss banking level KYC on-chain credential, but to basically see the vision that grew out of that thought process and where you're heading in the next years. I'm really excited to see what's going to come in the next few months and years. With that being said, Polimec is coming soon. Get your KYC credentials on www.kyc-credentials.com. Thank you for your time, Micha. Always a pleasure chatting to you, and I hope to have you on another podcast in a couple of months talking about new solutions rolling out.
Sure. Anytime.
Thank you, Micha.
Thank you, David. Thanks.
Good. Flavio.
Hier wegstellen.